Ivana Hughes teaches chemistry at Columbia University. She's also an expert on nuclear technologies, and she serves as president of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation.
Whoa.
And Ivana, you have been making the rounds lately on some of the top podcasts. So I saw you on Aaron Mate's podcast. I saw you with Tucker Carlson. So finally, you've come to the creme de la creme of all of them.
Now I made it. Now my job will be done after this session.
So Ivana, what we need to do is go from DEFCON 4 right now to DEFCON 2, because you and I were talking the movie from Netflix, A House of Dynamite. You've been talking about the Burevestnik. We have the claim that we saw from Donald Trump. Actually, you asked for this from Donald Trump, where he has said some useful things. Let's take a quick look at that and then jump right in.
The things we're trying to do with Russia and with China is denuclearization. And it's very important. One of the things I discussed with President Putin the other day, it wasn't just that, it was also other things. And I think the denuclearization is it's a big aim, but Russia's willing to do it, and I think China's going to be willing to do it too. We can't let nuclear weapons proliferate. We have to stop nuclear weapons. The power is too great. Okay? Thank you.
I'd like to ask you further questions.
I mean, what do you think? It seems straightforward.
Those are great quotes. Absolutely great quotes. It really is the game in town. This is just something that I think we've been sort of sleeping on for decades. After the end of the Cold War, people forgot that we had nuclear weapons. At the time, we were actually getting rid of them slowly but surely. In 1986, we had 70,000 nuclear warheads. Most of them were in the possession of the United States and the Soviet Union. And today we have 12,500, still more than enough to destroy the world, but, over and over again, to kill instantly, literally millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, and then to cause such environmental changes that billions of people die of starvation or for other reasons, collapse of civilization, etc. In the same year, in 1986, when there were 70,000, it was Reagan and Gorbachev getting together in Reykjavik and stating not only that nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought, but they actually also very seriously discussed eliminating their nuclear arsenals. That was on the table. That was, like, some historians describe it as within a hair's breadth of a signature. And Reagan ended up being dissuaded by his advisors. The main reason was the Star Wars program that the U.S. had been, dreaming about. Didn't amount to much of anything in the end. But at the time, Reagan said, okay, we'll eliminate nuclear weapons, but we have to keep Star Wars. And Gorbachev said, well, if we don't have nuclear weapons, why do you need Star Wars? And so that's where they split up and didn't go full, as President Trump puts it, denuclearization. But they did make reductions. Obviously, the Cold War ended, the Soviet Union dissolved, and the numbers were reduced very significantly. That's a good thing. But President Trump is right. We have to go all the way to zero nuclear warheads because these things are quite simply too dangerous.
Now, I got a question on this, if I could.
Yeah, of course.
In June of 2024, you and Peter Kuznick wrote in Responsible Statescraft, prolonging the Ukraine war is flirting with nuclear disaster. However, to play devil's advocate, tons of people in the West say, Russia's bluffing, it's exaggeration, that'll never happen. What do you say to that?
I have two responses. The first is A quote by John F. Kennedy, who's speaking about what had transpired during the Cuban Missile Crisis, said, if we do, or during the Cuban Missile Crisis, said to his brother, Robert Kennedy, if we do what they want us to do, none of us will be around afterwards to tell them they were wrong, right? So we'll all be gone. I won't get to tell those, the idiots who think that we should just keep going at it, right? That they were wrong if we all die in a nuclear war, or we, we're starving to death. I mean, this will not exist, right? We will not be talking on Zoom or any other platform. My second response is that I actually am arguably more concerned about something happening in the fog of war, some sort of either an accident or a miscalculation, than I am concerned that one of these men in charge of nuclear arsenals will make the deliberate decision to use a nuclear warhead. And so the more, when you prolong this thing, and I mean, it's in some sense, you could say it's a miracle. It's been going on for so long, and it's been, of course, it hasn't been contained in that on the order of 1 million people have either died or been wounded. I mean, it's just, if that's not enough of a tragedy for you, then I don't know. I don't really know what to say. But in terms of that ultimate destruction of the world, clearly we're still here, and that hasn't happened. But that doesn't mean it couldn't happen, and it doesn't mean that things aren't getting, in some sense, more dangerous. In some sense, everything is the kind of decision making that was always much too short to have, the future of humanity, hanging on that decision. It was always sort of minutes and so on. Those timescales are even getting shorter. I mean, Russia has now tested some of these delivery vehicles that are changing, the equation. And I think one of the really genuine concerns about AI is whether it ends up being used in, for example, monitoring of whether or not someone is attacking you, and whether there could be mistakes being made in that situation, such that you think you're under attack and you launch a response, and now you're in a nuclear war, even though you didn't really intend for that to be the case. So yeah, I mean, I completely stand by that article. I actually, in the summer of 2022, I tried for a long time to publish an article, which the title was Unapologetic About Arguing for Peace. And I mean, like, nobody would take it. It was just like,
That's why God invented Substack.
and then I went to, somebody told me about some platform where I, went and published it in November, but it was something I had written in April, after those initial peace negotiations in Istanbul had failed. And I was literally just, pulling my hair out, like, what are they doing? Yeah.
Now, this concept of I don't think any of us are fans of mutually assured destruction, but there's at least a certain logic to it that's, you could say it's at least arguable. But what I don't understand at all, and maybe you can shed some light on this, is why are there so many more weapons than would be necessary to destroy the world? I don't even see how there could be any argument for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm going to even pin a lot of that, the majority of that, on the military industrial complex. I mean, it's great. You offer up this contract, you can build new warheads, you can modernize the arsenal, you can just kind of keep building. I mean, that's probably a big part of it. The the really amazing part of all of this, and mutually assured destruction, all throughout the Cold War, that one was a little bit simpler because it really was two countries, right? Others had nuclear weapons, but the Cold War was such a serious thing, right, between these two, not just rivals, not just economic systems, I mean, everything, right? The two superpowers. The others mattered less. Now there are 9 countries in the world that possess these 12,500 nuclear warheads. Still, the United States and Russia have the most. But there are other conflicts that could lead to this nuclear exchange. And one of the things that we do know from the kinds of war games they do in Washington, D.C., is that when one is used, the next thing that happens is full-blown nuclear war, right? It doesn't stop at one. The simulations 100% of the time lead to a full-blown nuclear war, not just most of the time or some of the time, 100% of the time.
So the point is, there's never a winnable moment. You can't say, well, we're going to have some in reserve and we'll have a second strike. It's just, it goes and everybody goes.
Right? And here's the biggest irony of all, right? We call it MAD, mutually assured destruction, but it was always and very much remains SAD, meaning self-assured destruction. And what I mean by that is, even if you could, and we can't, the Russians can't disable them or strike in such a way that, imagine that you disable their ability to respond. You would have to use so many nuclear warheads that you would induce these environmental changes, cause radiation, cause ozone layer destruction, cause nuclear winter. You would destroy yourself. It wouldn't even matter that we survived the war itself. Not that it can happen that way. It's just that even if you somehow could imagine it happening that way, it wouldn't work in the way that you think it would work. You would self-destruct as well. To destroy your enemy, you would have to self-destruct.
Of the nine nations that have nuclear weapons, which would you be most worried about? And how much of what Trump was saying in our opening, as far as they're doing these tests, how much of that was nonsense, and how much was he talking through his ass?
A lot of it was nonsense. So nobody has tested nuclear weapons in the 21st century except for North Korea. They have conducted 6 tests between 2006 and 2017. Okay? That's when we talk about nuclear tests. Of course, this business of delivery vehicles, and now what Russia has done is they have tested some of these delivery vehicles that are nuclear powered. And the fact that they're nuclear powered, you need very little nuclear material to produce a lot of energy. And so nuclear power means that these delivery vehicles can travel much farther distances. They can even travel faster, lower in the atmosphere, all kinds of things. So now you can powering them by nuclear, but they can also carry nuclear warheads, right? So the whole thing, but it isn't even just going back to the kinds of delivery vehicles that we have, the intercontinental ballistic missiles, which, by the way, we test several times a year from the Vandenberg airspace base in California. We actually send them out to the Marshall Islands, and they try to intercept them. They do different things. This is called the Kwajalein military base out in the Marshall Islands. So nobody has tested. He's absolutely wrong. Yes, the Russians have been testing new and more advanced delivery vehicles. The United States stopped testing in 1992. That was stopping our underground testing. The atmospheric and underwater testing ended in 1963 for the United States, Soviet Union, and the UK. That year, Khrushchev and President Kennedy had negotiated the partial test ban treaty, and that was an enormous achievement. I mean, that was absolutely a huge, huge step in the right direction. Um, and really instrumental. I mean, people were dying around the globe, truly, including here in the United States from the tests conducted, the 100 atmospheric tests conducted at the Nevada test site, which actually contaminated, uh, caused radiological contamination throughout the United States.
Ivana, the closest thing that I can find, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
to the recent Burevestnik or the Poseidon test by Russia was recently, I think it was only reported this November, but in August, the United States sent out an F-35 to test the B-61-12 glide nuclear bomb, but it had no warhead. And they were just testing basically the same thing, a delivery vehicle, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's what I mean when I say the Vandenberg tests. Those are intercontinental ballistic missiles. So there are different kinds of missiles, different kinds of these delivery vehicles. And so, yes, we test ours and they work. And the nuclear, when it comes to the nuclear warheads, again, everyone except for North Korea has stopped testing those underground. They do something called subcritical tests. So they do something that gets just close enough to an explosion, but not actually having an actual explosion underground or God forbid, in the atmosphere.
So Trump was conflating the nuclear warheads with the missiles that carry them.
Yes.
But was
yes.
he also talking nonsense when he said we are going to be conducting tests? I mean, what should we make of that? What should we expect?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people in the field are really split on this. Some are actually genuinely worried because they say things like, well, that came out of the mouth of our president. I think the Department of Energy afterwards tried to sort of do some damage control and say no. And the department, people often don't realize, Department of Energy is not just, it does not just deal with energy. They actually are in charge of our nuclear arsenal. And so they came out to say, no, we're not going to test. I mean, from very reliable sources, my understanding is if the United States actually made the decision today to test nuclear weapons, we'd need at least 3 years to actually be able to conduct our first test. I mean, we stopped doing this, 30
that's a relief.
years ago. Yeah, no, it's a good thing.
So it's just Trump being Trump. Relax, everybody.
But I will say, there was that moment in the clip you showed where he says denuclearization, and he's absolutely right. I do think that he fundamentally understands. I don't know. I mean, I would hate to.
He seems to understand the danger of it.
Yes.
So I think this is just his negotiating shtick that we're seeing.
Yeah, sure. And in some sense, I mean, the other presidents must have understood this, but they never talked about it in this way. Nobody ever. I mean, Biden clearly was like,
Well, he seemed like he was running into more nuclear danger.
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on, man.
Sorry.
So, question I have for you, last question from me. The London Guardian, Axios, Financial Times, various publications are saying that the United States and Russia are now putting together a whole plan for the end of the conflict. The U.S. and Russia, they're drafting the plan to end the Ukraine war based on a capitulation, essentially, from Kiev. My question to you is, given the situation in Ukraine, Europe, Germany building up, is it not, in fact, more dangerous now, not because of maybe what we would do, but what's going on over there for nuclear?
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of peace agreement can't come fast enough, right? I mean, it's just, this has gone on for too long and has as we already said, created conditions that could literally kill us all. The I really hope that it works. I'm primarily disappointed that it didn't happen much earlier, which actually would have been better for Ukraine. I think that whatever they would have gone in April of 2022 would have been far better than what they can get today. I still think that whatever they can get today is going to be better than what they can get in a year or 2 years, or God forbid, another 3 years, right? So the Europeans are, I mean, they've been a problem all along, and I really don't understand what it is that they think they're doing. I'm incredibly concerned about. I mean, if there is, if we had a nuclear war, there would be no Europe. Europe is tiny. Europe is tiny. Like, you could imagine some, pockets in the US. Russia is certainly very large, right? But like, Europe will just be absolutely will not exist. So I don't know what those leaders are thinking.
And Russia's foreign minister Lavrov said that the UK isn't even fully in control of its own nuclear arsenal.
They're not. They actually don't have. They have to use U.S. Delivery vehicles. They and the U.S. has transferred some of its nuclear weapons to the U.K. just in the last year. We don't actually hear about this. It shows that they might even be worried that theirs actually wouldn't work. I mean, the whole thing is a little bit of a mess. The U.S. also has nuclear weapons in Italy, in Belgium, Italy, Germany, Netherlands, and Turkey. We used to have thousands of them in Europe. Right now, it's something on the order of 200 warheads. When Russia actually transferred its nuclear weapons to Belarus, Biden gave this big speech about, how terrible this was, not acknowledging for 1 second that we have been doing the same thing for decades, and we're still and currently doing it. And now we seem to have transferred them to the UK as well. So yeah, no, it's. I hope that some version of a peace deal does move forward, primarily for the people of Ukraine who have clearly suffered enough, for the people of Russia who, when people count, of course, I'm as horrified as anyone by civilian deaths. But to me, military deaths aren't. I mean, they're still deaths. They're very often young people. I have 2 sons. One is in high school, one is in college. I also have a daughter who's older. But I don't take that lightly. It's terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah, in Ukraine.
Well, before we move on to our next guest, let's make sure Morgan gets a chance to get in here. All this male energy, we overpower her.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Morgan.
I was just going to say that even with, given Ukraine, you have a lot of men that are not volunteering to fight. So they're being forced to fight. So that is, that's really, I wouldn't really even call them a soldier. They're being forced to, have a gun.
Yes. No, literally, picked up off the street trying to run away. And we've all seen these videos. It's very, very sad.
Yeah.
And just what it's done to the country in terms of how many people have left the country, what's happened to the infrastructure. And when you think about 1 million dead or wounded in a war, for every single person, that's, someone's son or daughter, that's, someone whose parents are impacted, siblings. And I mean, how many people are actually deeply impacted by each of the persons who are considered, a number and a casualty. It's all really devastating. And here we are. I mean, what in some sense for me is kind of the hardest about thinking about these issues is here we are in the 21st century. Here we are. I don't even know where you are in the country right now, right? Like we're having we've been able to do so many amazing things, and yet we still, resolve conflicts or pursue conflicts by killing each other. I mean, it's so barbaric. It's absolutely to me just unacceptable. So yes, peace can't come fast enough, and I do hope it comes.
Well, hopefully we can have you at an event. Those two, Jeff and Morgan, they are in North Carolina. I'm in Texas.
Nice.
We eventually want to have some events, and you would be
New York
wonderful.
would be okay too. I used to live
New
in the
York?
neighborhood where you work. I
Yeah.
used to live on 109th Street near Broadway.
Amazing. Can I tell you one story before your
Yes,
next
yes.
guest? So I live right by Columbia University. It's actually a Columbia University apartment, and it was given to my husband. The faculty sort of get these apartments, and we pay rent and so on. But we live in a historic apartment because it was in our apartment that it was the apartment previously occupied by the family of a physicist named I. Rabi. He discovered nuclear magnetic resonance, which is why we have MRI. So if you've had an MRI, you can thank Rabi for that. But he was also a friend of Oppenheimer's. And the two of them met in our apartment in December of 1945
Wow.
and discussed international control of nuclear weapons, which is what I work on.
wow.
But I'm not talking to podcasters.
Wow.
It's like a museum. It's not just a home. It's a museum.
No, it's a real.
Do you hear voices in the house when you?
I think I do. I must. I mean, it's like, and Rabi really was against nuclear weapons. He was featured highly in the film Oppenheimer, but his wife lived to be 102. And died in 2005, and we moved into the apartment in 2006. So it wasn't even like there were intermediate, ghosts. It was like straight from them to us. Anyway.
Well, I do recommend that people. I do recommend people watch the interview that you did with Tucker Carlson and also Aaron Matei. I think that the movie A House of Dynamite is very interesting because it is this kind of we blew it, mistake situation. So thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Ivana. I wish I had more time to speak with you, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, me too.